and Director of Public Works and Development, Bryan Weimer. Before we get into the discussion, I just wanted to let everyone know that if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question of either of these two gentlemen, you can dial *3 and you'll be put through to an operator. And if you are on one of our websites, you can pop a question into the comments box and it'll show up on our little dashboard here. These events, if you haven't attended them before, we do these quarterly with each commissioner in their respective districts. And they're designed to give you an update on the latest county business. And in this case, to give you a little deeper dive into one of our key departments, we've done, this is actually our 5th of 5 for this quarter. So we've already done events like this with our finance department, community resources, human services, and open spaces. Almost forgot. So if you have missed any of these and you want to learn more about any of those departments, these events are all recorded and available on our website. So let's get right to it. I'm going to introduce Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Luke, and thank you to everyone for joining us here tonight. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to folks that live in my district, and hopefully soon we'll get to the point where we can do this in person again. First slide, Luke. Well, there's the introduction. We want to talk a little bit about COVID. First of all, we're in clear level. Now, when I was in the Army and we practiced for going through chemical attacks, we would call the all clear and we would signal like this, saying that everything was clear. You could take off your gas mask. Well, guess what? You can take off your mask. We're currently in level clear. That'll be for 90 days. And so that will be until sometime in mid-August. But I encourage everyone to look at Tri-County Health Department's website for changes, as things can change at a moment's notice. We are at the county encouraging everyone to be cautious and use best practices such as social distancing, mask wearing, particularly if you have not been vaccinated yet. The state has also ended mandatory mask wearing policies, and we're thankful to the governor for doing that. All people 16 and older are now eligible for vaccines, and they've also authorized it for some children 12 to 15. You can use your best judgment for your children if you think that that is something you want to do. But again, to stay updated on all of these developments, please watch the Tri-County Health Department.org, tchd.org, as well as our website. Next slide, please, Luke. I wanted to give a little overview of Arapahoe County in 2021, what we're doing. By far, the guiding principle that we have in effect this year is fiscal restraint. Now, I know a lot of people, and including me, believe that that should always be something that the governor has, or that the government has, governor too, has fiscal restraint. And we just don't know what the full effects of this COVID crisis in 2020 and into 2021 are going to have on us. So all of these things are still unfolding. So we are tightening our belt. We're watching our pennies. We're looking in the couch cushions for any spare change to try to save taxpayer dollars, the taxes that our hardworking citizens have paid into the county. Now, the county may not experience some of these COVID-related impacts until as late as 2022 or 2023, especially because we're primarily funded through property taxes. Property taxes are our primary source of revenue, and 2021 is an assessment year. Preliminary reports from the assessor's office indicate that home values have increased about 9.2% over the last year. But certain categories of commercial real estate, including restaurants and bars, offices, and hospitality, have declined because of COVID-related factors. Now, I've heard a lot about from a lot of my constituents about the property valuation notices that the assessor has sent out. I won't go into a lot of detail about that, but you do have an opportunity to contest or appeal that property valuation. So along with your notice, you should have gotten instructions on how to challenge or appeal that assessment on your property. But with all of these things in mind, the county is operating at a much more fiscally conservative fashion. We are trying to address everything that we possibly can. And in that line, we've come up with a new strategic plan for the entire county. This is the plan that sets the standards for our actions, our interactions, and our decisions as we determine how we can be more efficient in the use of our funds. But we want to always deliver exceptional service whenever possible. Even given the economic stressors that the pandemic has created, using this strategic plan, this kind of blueprint for how we go forward into the future, will help keep our fiscal house in order, and it will be a top priority for the board. The strategic plan includes things such as eliminating unnecessary expenses wherever possible. That's a continuous process that the county goes through to look at ways we can always get better. We're performing audits to identify potential savings. We've been pretty pleased with how well staff has been keeping up with the essential county services. Everything was bad when we were shut down March, April, May last year. But we did gradually bring county employees back and start addressing things. In fact, one of the biggest areas where we normally get complaints is about our motor vehicle office. And we're actually getting compliments right now with folks that call in, make appointments, and come in, and they're in and out in less than 10 minutes in many cases. So we're going to keep assessing how each one of our departments is working under that. We have a work from home assessment analysis going on to see which employees can work from home and which need to actually come in. We'll continue to examine these operations with the goal of maximizing our efficiencies. We still have to deal with our aging infrastructure. And by that, I mean our roads, our bridges, and our buildings, especially the detention center. One of the things that the board and all of the relevant stakeholders that we've consulted will be evaluating this year is the best way to address these problems moving forward. Another item that is probably of great interest to most people is we are going to address the reauthorization of the 0.25% sales tax that largely funds our open space operations. This is a great program. We've been able to help many of our municipal partners. We have open space sites and programs that are amongst the most popular and valuable assets rated by county employees. And we'll be asking voters to allow us to continue to build on the successes that we've had with that sales tax. Of course, remember that the Open Spaces Department manages our county fair. And here's some good news. We're going to have a county fair this year. Shannon Carter will be giving the Board of County Commissioners more information about that, and we'll get it out to the public as soon as we possibly can. The dates are July 22nd through the 25th. 4-H will have their own schedule. So if you've got kids that are involved with 4-H, or you yourself are involved with 4-H as a adult supervisor or adult helper, then make sure that you keep that schedule in mind, because those will all be on our website. One other thing to let you know is we'll be getting some funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. We're calling it the ARPA. It's just easier to say than American Rescue Plan Act. So the ARPA funds will be coming in. We are trying to get, a plan for how is the best way to get that money divvied out to our citizens. So we're still working on those specifics, but we'll try to get you those details as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. We do have these challenges and opportunities. Opportunities, let's talk about that. Last year, Arapahoe County received $114.5 million in relief funding from the CARES Act. Its impact was felt all over the county. Of course, with any funds that come from the federal government, there are strings attached and there are things that they authorize us to spend that money on. Unfortunately, roads was not one of those things that we were able to spend some money on. But in 2021, the county will continue to finish up spending these CARES funds that we got. These initiatives that we were able to spend money on were things like food and housing security, workforce development, and we've created some new programs as well. We did have a program that would reimburse businesses if they had to, in order to save their business, if they had to take out a second mortgage, if they had to cash in an insurance policy, if they had to go into their retirement savings. We had a program to reimburse the owners for any expenses that to reimburse them for any of those business saving expenses that they undertook. We're also continuing to administer our programs for veterans and seniors. We have a new Veteran Service Office that I'll talk about in a minute. As always, you can always visit our website here at arapahogov.com and get more information about any of those services. Now we want to give you a little overview of the county. And if you're not familiar with what the county does and how the county does it, Luke, can you do your County 101 presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Before I get into that, I'd like to remind everyone, if you're on the phone and want to ask a question, you can dial *3, and that'll put you through to an operator. You can also put a question in the comments box if you're watching us online. And if you'd like to be added via email to any of our mailing lists for events like this or for any newsletters or anything like that, you can dial *6, and that'll put you through to an operator. I want to ask a polling question real quickly for people on the phone. The question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? Press 1 if you're very likely to recommend it. Press 2 if you're somewhat likely. Press 3 if you're neutral. Press 4 if you're somewhat unlikely. And press 5 if you're very unlikely. Once again, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend living in the county to someone else? 1 is very likely. 2 is somewhat likely, 3 is neutral, 4 is somewhat unlikely, and 5 is very unlikely. Now, to County 101. We set this program up. It's kind of a rolling program that informs people about what counties do and don't do. Now, for District 3 folks like yourselves, you're probably more familiar than the average person with what counties do, because counties largely cover the unincorporated parts of the county. So if you live in a town like a Strasburg or a Byers or even in East Aurora, it gets a little more complex with who you should call to get what service. So what we've done is set up a website, a page on our website at arapahogov.com/county101, and that contains some basic information about the kind of things that we do. Most of you know we have 5 elected county commissioners. We also have other elected officials, including the assessor, the coroner, the sheriff, the clerk and recorder. We do things like issue and keep the records for marriage licenses and driver's licenses. We run elections. We assess properties and property taxes, and we do any number of other things as well. And as Commissioner Jackson likes to say, the state makes the sausage and we serve it. So we're basically agents of the state that take the laws that the state hands down, and we look for ways to implement them both tactically and financially. So the idea with County 101 is to get everybody a little more comfortable with everything that we do and the things we can help you with. And one thing to mention with all that is, even if it's something we don't do, we're always happy to answer your emails or take your phone calls and point you in the right direction. That happens all the time. We do that constantly in our communications office. So, to the commissioner's earlier points about the assessment year in 2021, this is a good example of County 101. If you wanted to go and watch the finance department's conversation with the commissioner, which was with Commissioner Carrie Warren Gully from District 1, that would give you a much more comprehensive and clearly explained process for how assessment works and why we may not feel the full effects of the COVID crisis for another year or two, possibly. So that's County 101 in a nutshell. I'll give you the answer to those, the response rates to the poll question in a few minutes. But now I'll hand it back to Commissioner Baker to introduce Bryan Weimer.
Thank you, Luke. And again, many people know that I was a county employee for 18 years before I became a county commissioner. And I've worked with this gentleman for many years. We were both number 2 guy in our departments, and he's now number 1 guy in his department. So let me introduce Bryan Weimer, our Public Works and Development Director. And he has got an insight into the county and the way the county does things. How many years have you been with us, Bryan?
37 a week ago.
30 years a week ago. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And why don't you give us a little overview of Public Works and Development?
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. And Public Works and Development really consists of 6 divisions. And you can break those divisions into the land use component and an infrastructure component. So within land use is the building division, and that division handles vertical structures. So they do plan review, they do inspections, and they do permitting. And it's all on the vertical structures. And then you have the planning division, and that planning division consists of current planning, so that's current development that's going on, long-range planning, looking at into the future what that might look like, zoning for code enforcement, animal services, and then weed control. And that's all within the planning division. And then finally within that land use area is the engineering services division. And with that, it really handles the engineering review of land development. They do permitting within right-of-way, and they handle the floodplain administration. So that's all our land use side. Within the infrastructure side, you have road and bridge, and they do all the road and asset maintenance associated with the county's infrastructure that we have. And then transportation division handles transportation planning, capital improvements, and traffic engineering and operations. Then the other division is our support services division, and that division really is support. They support all the other divisions within the department. They handle budget and financial management. The Public Works Department, and I'm very proud of this, is the 137th Public Works agency in North America to be accredited by the American Public Works Association. We're the first county in Colorado to receive that designation, and we're one of 8 agencies within Colorado itself to do that. And really what that involved was us documenting all the things that we do. So we have policies, we have standard operating procedures on over 600 practices that were part of that accreditation. And we're currently going through reaccreditation that is scheduled to occur in 2022, January of 2022. Now to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing that you're probably interested in. Within the Road and Bridge division, we have planned work within District 3 for maintenance activities. And one of those activities is overlaying roadways, where we put a 2 or 3 inch existing or asphalt over the existing asphalt roads. We're doing nearly 16 miles of that within the eastern portion of the county. And that's 16 miles of the 20 miles planned for the entire county. So we're doing quite a bit of work out in that area. It also includes 3.7 miles within Stage Run. And Stage Run is along Smoky Hill for those of you north of County Line Road, east of Smoky Hill or west of Smoky Hill Road. In the eastern portion of the county, we're doing 12 miles at 17 different locations in that area. We're also doing 3.1 miles of chip seals. We're doing 21.6 miles of gravel treatment, and we're rehabbing or maintaining 5 bridges in that area. So quite a bit of work is really occurring in District 3 this year. From a transportation division perspective, we're in the middle of doing our transportation master plan, and we're looking at probably having another public meeting coming up with showing the results of our outreach to the public, our recommendations, and that will be coming up in June/July timeframe, and that does include the towns of Strasburg and Bennett in terms of making some recommendations from a transportation perspective. We also have the I-70 Air Park and Watkins Interchanges. We're looking at those for what ultimately needs to be provided at those interchanges because of the developments of Sky Ranch and Prosper. And we're looking at having another public meeting in the next 30 to 60 days as well. We're also participating with CDOT and Bennett at the State Highway 79 and I-70 interchange that's going through design and will have construction. On the west end of the District 3, if you will, we're wrapping up the Gun Club and Quincy intersection continuous flow project that should be open in June, second week in June, I believe. And then we're also starting work at Gun Club in Alameda, doing some design there for improvements and what that might look like. We're also looking at traffic calming on Versailles Parkway. Had a public meeting already on that one, and we're in the design process, and we'll be going to construction after we finalize that design. And we completed some median improvements on Piccadilly south of Quincy. So those are some of the things. And then, I talked that within Public Works is the planning side of things, and we're really looking at land use code changes, and a lot of those is trying to separate what would be urban required land use codes to what is rural land use codes. We've already adopted a billboard regulations that the board has adopted, and I believe that was in January. We're looking at sign code modifications, and the board has heard a couple of variations on that over the last couple of months. In particular, we're looking at accessory dwelling units and storage containers and what that might look like within the code, both east and west, because there's certainly different contexts, different topology where the code really doesn't address that differences now, and we wanted to take that into account. We're also looking at our landscaping regulations. Again, an east versus west, urban versus rural component and what that looks like, and have to recognize that there is a difference between those areas where our current regulations don't. Then finally, we're looking at oil and gas regulations. I know many of you have been involved with that, provided us comments. We have revised those. and updated them based on the input and taking into account what COGCC has adopted. And so we've tried to do that. COGCC at the state level adopted their regulations at the beginning of the year, and we're taking those into account with our modifications. The final review of those regulations are occurring internally within our department and legal staff, and then we plan to issue those for the public review in June. Our target adoption date is in August of this year, whereby it would go through the Planning Commission and then ultimately the Board of County Commissioners. And then finally, kind of some long-range planning area discussions that we've done in this area is the Watkins Bennett Area Vision Study, and we're wrapping up phase 2 of that study right now. There is a Planning Commission meeting on that study on June 1st, so I encourage you to watch that. But we'll also have a virtual open house for 4 weeks after that meeting, so that will be occurring in June into the first part of July. That then will take us into phase 3, where we'll be developing the plan, and that will occur through the summer, and that will be based on the input that we got through phases 1 and 2. And then finally, phase 4 will be presentation of the draft plan, which will include a virtual public meeting to get comments, and then ultimately adoption by the Planning Commission in the fall of 2021. So as you can see, we have a lot of information going, or a lot of projects going, and very busy within our division, but proud of what our staff is doing and being able to support the public and citizens and users of the transportation system. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Bryan. Luke, do you want to give out the results of the poll and maybe talk a little bit more about how people can ask questions?
Absolutely. So if you are on the phone and want to ask a question, just dial *3 and you'll be put through to an operator. We have a couple questions lined up already. And if you would like to be added to a mailing list for any of our events or newsletters, just dial *6. If you have a question and you're online, you can plug it into the comments box. We also have some questions there. And so the first polling question was, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend living in the county to someone else? 49% of you are very likely to recommend it. 22% are somewhat likely. 14% are neutral. 9% are somewhat unlikely, and 6% are very unlikely. So we now, before we get into our discussion, I want to ask you one more polling question. And this is another 1 to 5 scale for those on the phone. The question is, how satisfied are you about your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? So press 1 if you've been very satisfied with your interactions with us. Press 2 if you've been somewhat satisfied. Press 3 if you're neutral or it's not applicable because you haven't really had an opportunity to interact with us. Press 4 if you're somewhat dissatisfied, and press 5 if you're very dissatisfied. Once again, how satisfied are you about your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? 1 is very satisfied, 2 is somewhat satisfied, 3 is neutral or not applicable, 4 is somewhat dissatisfied, and 5 is very dissatisfied. Obviously, we're trying to keep those numbers as positive as we can, but we want to hear what you have to say, and we'll try to make it better wherever we can. So now it's time for some questions. We're getting a lot of questions about the gravel versus asphalt road situation in various parts of the county. So I'm going to start with a phone question for both of you, and then we'll try to summarize them because a lot of them are very similar. But let's start with Lori from Bennett. Lori, you are live with the Commissioner and Director Weimer.
Hello?
Hello, Lori.
Hi. Yes?
Go right ahead.
Do I ask my question?
Yep.
Okay. We have been notified by the I-70 scouts that Manila Road, extending from I-70 down into Box Elder, which after many years, was finally asphalted, that they are talking about turning us back to gravel. And our question is, are you kidding? Why? The road was horrible when it was gravel, and you guys spent a ton of money trying to maintain it, and the population out here is growing. We've been out here 30 years.
Let me take the first crack at that, and then I'll let Bryan do that. Yeah, there's some mix up there. It's not Manila Road that we're talking about taking back to gravel. That's the first thing. Bryan, do you want to address what we're talking about with Box Elder Estates?
Yeah, so where we're talking about is Box Elder subdivision and the roadways in there. Those roadways were treated with a recycled asphalt and a chip seal put over the top of it. They were never paved like a paved roadway with asphalt. And so what we're looking at is what is the best way that we can afford to deal with that. We want to engage with the Box Elder subdivision and plan a public meeting in July to have that discussion and see what our opportunities and come to a mutually agreed to solution. The solution could be what was done previously, that being a recycled asphalt with a chip seal. We're calling it a Arapahoe blend at this point in time. But to be honest, we don't have the funding to put it into asphalt and actually pave it as a paved roadway like Manila Road is. So the misunderstanding is we're not talking about Manila, we're talking about Box Elder. But we plan on having a public meeting with those residents that are directly affected to have that open discussion, and that's scheduled for July.
And so stay tuned to our website for updates about when that will be. We're probably not sure yet if it's going to be in person or virtual or some combination of the two. So Bryan, can you talk a little bit about, is this purely a financial calculation about the value versus the depreciation of the road materials? Like how does Public Works make those decisions?
Yeah, we look at those decisions, and we looked at various alternatives for that subdivision. And one was using the Arapahoe blend mixture, which was about $370,000. New asphalt was $1.4 million. And then if we reconstructed everything, build it like a regular roadway, if you will, that was $4.9 million. Our budget is only $4.2 million for roadway maintenance throughout the entire county. So when we start talking millions of dollars in one subdivision, that becomes quite a challenge for us to maintain our roadways. Right now, and I'll take this opportunity to say, you know, Road and Bridge only receives a mill levy of 0.479. If you take a typical home within Box Elder itself, it has a $2,200 tax bill. Of that tax bill, Road and Bridge only receives $17 from that tax. We looked at the entire subdivision of Box Elder, and with its entire assessment and that mill levy, it only generates about $1,800 a year that we would have. So, when we start looking at these type of investments, we have to look and be very financial stewards of the public money and where we're making those investments. And that's one of the challenges. We would certainly like to provide that level of service of paving roadways in eastern Arapahoe County. We just can't, and our transportation plan still has gravel roadways. But the Arapahoe blend that we're currently using is a very good material. We have examples of that I can, and many of you drive on those roadways, maybe not realizing that it's a recycled asphalt mixture. And that's kind of what we're proposing within the Box Elder subdivision.
And because it's recycled, it's more affordable.
It's more
too.
affordable. We get that material for free, either from the state when they're doing overlays or from our own milling operations. And we stockpile that and utilize that within our roadways. So we're using 100% of that recycled asphalt. So it's very cheap for us to use. It's really just our labor to put that down at that point.
Right. And one thing that I should mention is that of all the departments in the county, I think it's safe to say that Public Works is one of them that really didn't have any kind of a COVID break. Those guys were out doing their jobs same as they always were. So we're really pleased with how that went for them. We do have a number of construction projects that you've mentioned in passing here. One of which is Quincy and Gun Club intersection. Can you talk a little bit more about how that continuous flow intersection works? And I think it sounds like it'll be up and running by the time we get to the county fair, which is great for traffic coming in and out of the fair.
That is correct. That project was a sizable project. It was about $13-14 million project. And it's funded through a partnership. And that partnership includes the federal government, who provided a significant amount of funding for it. It included City of Aurora, Arapahoe County, and the regional transportation impact fee that we collect for developments in that area. The way that project will work is on the north and south legs of Gun Club, you will turn and get into a turn lane that is on the opposite side of the through lane. And what you're doing is you're turning before you get to the intersection. So we've eliminated all turning movements except for right turn movements at the intersection of Gun Club off of or onto Quincy Avenue. So those left turn movements can occur at the same time as the through movements are occurring. So it's a timing issue of the signals that will be in advance of that intersection. On our website, under Public Works, there's an example of how that intersection will work. And so I'd really suggest that people take a look at that. It's under Public Works, then the Transportation Division, and then you can find it as Quincy Gun Club. This intersection was identified as really the congestion point at that location. And by improving this, we're able then to now start looking at corridor improvements. I would point out that on Gun Club north of Quincy, that is actually a state highway and they're responsible for it. But south of Quincy, Aurora and Arapahoe County are looking at, okay, what is the next steps of improving Gun Club in that area? And that's widening associated with it, kind of past Dove Hill in that area. We also provided improvements on Quincy as part of this intersection, widening that those legs of the intersection out as well. And so the east and westbound underneath 470 are on opposite sides of the piers where they're supposed to be, as opposed to all the traffic being on one side of the pier as they originally were prior to that. And we had all that traffic that went east and west south of the piers for the E470 bridge. So now we're fully widened to its ultimate location, essentially from Gun Club back to the west. So hopefully it's a complicated explanation, which I had a picture of it, but that's how it's going to operate.
And
Yeah,
Luke, I just wanted to say also that we're working with the city of Aurora as they're doing some work on the southbound from Quincy to the Southlands, some projects that they've got there. And we're also looking at some ways, because some folks there along the east side of Gun Club have been talking to me too about the noise and different dirt berms and things like that. So that's something we're taking a look at as well.
Yeah, one thing I
absolutely.
will, if I could, I also mention that because of the close proximity of Gun Club and Quincy intersection to was the existing off ramps and on ramps northbound on 470, those ramps have now been relocated onto Gun Club. And the reason for that relocation was they were only 300 feet away from this busy intersection, and it just created all sorts of traffic operations and congestion issues. So that was a project that was jointly funded with Arapahoe County, City of Aurora, and E470 to relocate those ramps, and that will make the whole intersection operate a lot better.
Yeah, that's a hard one to visualize when you're just describing it verbally. So I would encourage everyone who's curious about it to go to our website, because the pictures really do explain how it works. It's not a very familiar type of intersection, but it is pretty innovative. So you know, a lot of these questions really kind of come back to growth, and I know that a lot of people in the county in general are always concerned about growth. And so we've compiled some data points for you from one of our colleagues in the PWD, and I'm just going to go through some of these numbers here and have both of you talk about it. As of the most recent data, District 3 has the county's highest population with 146,000 people, and the most growth of any district since 2010, with about an additional 34,500 residents. That's about 12,000 households since 2010. District 3 has the most married couple families with almost 31,000. It has the fewest people over 65 years old living alone with only 2,300. But the district is also aging because the median age has increased by about almost 2 years since 2010. The median household income of $100,000, 119, is the second highest in the county and increased about $19,000 in the last 10 years. And it's also the only district to show an increase in the number of families below the poverty level between 2010 and 2019. Still a small number of families at 1,200 or so. That's obviously 1,200 too many, and we're doing what we can to address that. We also, the district had the most people who moved in the past year from a different home in the county, is about 12,800. And then the share of the district's population that was non-Hispanic white dropped from 67.7% in 2010 to 61.8% in 2019. And the Hispanic or Latino population was the largest non-white group at 22,800 in 2019. So starting with Commissioner Baker, I mean, you've lived in that district for quite a while and represented it for quite a while. Talk a little bit about the growth, because it seems like it comes up at almost every event we have that's regarding anything about county operation.
Yeah, it's an issue. It's a concern for a lot of people. When I was first campaigning, I would have two kinds of people approach me. One that said, "What are we going to do about the growth? We don't want it." The other person would approach me and say, "What are we going to do about growth? We want more of it." And so I represent both sides of that question. I represent the folks who wish that we could keep our small town feel, that we could keep our culture, small town culture. I will say that one of those stats that you said was about the fewest number of senior citizens living alone. That's because the people in my district take care of their family. I truly believe that we have folks that honor their elders, that take care of them, and make sure that they're safe. So that's one aspect of that growth, is that we need to make sure that we are still taking care of our families. The other thing about the growth, wow, I'm not sure where that noise is coming from. Another thing about the growth is that 146,000 people, that out of the 5 county commissioners district is the largest population. And so we just went through the 10-year census. By law, we are supposed to redraw those county commissioner districts by September. Because of COVID, the data that will be coming from the Census Bureau will not be getting to us in time to fulfill that. So the state legislature has granted a extension of the time to redraw those commissioner districts. But the idea would be to make them just about the same as far as population. There were 3 of us that ran for re-election in November, and in Commissioner District 1, Commissioner District 3, and Commissioner District 5. And the number of votes in Commissioner District 5 were roughly half of the 82,000 people who voted in my district. So there needs to be an effort made to make those districts equitable as far as the number of voters and number of population. So we will be going through a process to do that in the future. There has been a bill passed by the state legislature that kind of guides counties in how to do that, and we'll be following those guidelines.
And Bryan, so on the topic of growth, to the commissioner's point, where if once redistricting happens, it will sort of even out the populations of each district. With that in mind, and with, of course, just general growth considerations in mind, how does PWD prioritize its projects?
Well, first of all, on the subject of growth, if you remember, I talked about the Bennett-Watkins sub area plan, and that is truly a plan that looks at what does that area ultimately look like. You know, what type of growth are we looking at? Where would that growth occur? All those type of considerations. So that's why I think it's really important for citizens that are concerned about that, get involved with that study. There's public outreach opportunities to give your input on what you feel is appropriate in that area. And that's kind of the Watkins Bennett area, exactly where we're talking about. We also have a comp plan that identifies where growth will occur and what that growth looks like. You know, I think in this area, water is going to be a limiting factor in terms of what growth looks like in this area. And so those studies are very important. Relative to prioritizing plans, we do not look at commissioner districts and try to balance out how much we're spending in various districts. What we do is we look at, from a maintenance perspective, our pavement management model that is identifying where we need to make expenditures to be most cost effective and most efficient with the minimum money that we have. We also have a bridge management system. We have a traffic sign inventory asset management system. So all our assets are managed in systems where we're balancing the money that we have, and it's identifying where we should make those expenditures to get the biggest bang for our buck. On the capital side, those are a lot of times where we have partnerships, where we have different jurisdictions such as Aurora or Centennial, where we can partner to develop projects. But where we don't have that, it's going to be based on safety. It's going to be based on where we might be able to leverage funding. It could be utilized where there could be development coming in. They have paid those impact fees and they're creating an impact, and therefore we'll be doing an improvement to mitigate some of those impacts. Operationally, where we can make a big bang for our buck. So those are how we're making decisions with the data that we have. So it's really a data driven decision making process that we have for both maintenance and our capital projects.
Yeah, and that's true of many of our departments, especially these days. With what the commissioner said about fiscal restraint and so forth, we're definitely looking for ways to get the most bang for our buck in all of our services. I'm going to take a phone question now. This is from Larry in Aurora. Larry, go ahead. You are live.
Yes, I was calling because I live over near Aurora Parkway and Gun Club, and I noticed that there's a lot of appears to be a lot of development starting over there. There's a 29-acre tract at 6th Avenue between E470 and Gun Club, and it's been given a name, has a development application case number. It's called Lamar Landing. And then further down north towards I-70, there's going to be, it looks like there might be a development called Aurora Crossroads. And I was wondering if you knew more about it, what kind of development was going to go in those two areas?
Bryan, if you know, I know of some order fulfillment warehousing kind of projects going on in that area in the city of Aurora that we've gotten complaints about the traffic while the construction is going on. But do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, I don't know anything specific, but I know in those areas there's a lot of development going on. They are within the city of Aurora. I'm not sure if we have received referrals yet on that. Typically, our department, the planning division, receives referrals so that we can provide comments. One of the things I will provide comment on is that Gun Club in that area was a rural roadway at one time. There's access to various lots that were platted as rural residential lots. Now, with all the development that's occurring, that is turning into an urban type roadway. It needs to be improved. There's safety concerns, operational concerns, and that is one of the projects that I mentioned at Gun Club in Alameda, which kind of goes north and south of Alameda on Gun Club, as well as looking at Alameda. And so we're identifying what type of improvements are needed in that area and what that looks like, because it is a very challenging location at this point with all the development, primarily within the city. And so we're working with them directly to, again, partner on providing a solution in that area.
Okay. We have another land use question that we may be able to answer. Someone is asking, there's a 400-acre plot off Manila Road for sale. Do we have any information about that?
Is that on the west side of Manila?
I'm not sure.
Sure. If it is, it could be a parcel in there that could be a residential type parcel. I'm not sure. We have not received any type of development applications at this point in time at that location, but it could be up for sale to developers that might want to develop. And so we'd have to look at it. Is it in compliance with our comp plan in that area? Where are they going to get their water, and what type of public improvements would they need to be providing is the process that we would go through once a buyer and a developer is deciding to do something out there. So,
right. And you mentioned water a couple times. Talk a little more about like the issue that water use and supply is affecting this growth and vice versa?
Well, Commissioner Baker's just been in a couple of workshops over the last couple of weeks. So, do you want to take that first, Commissioner, and what you've been
Sure.
working on with that Sonora workshops?
Definitely. This is so important. I took 3 days, and staff did a great job in Bryan's shop to put this together. We've got, we have the Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority that I sit on the board, and it's relatively small in the overall scheme of things. But in this workshop, we were joined by the City of Aurora Water. We were joined by Aqua, and we were joined by Rangeview Pure Cycle, which is also doing the development of the Sky Ranch development. And so we all, and we could have had a lot more, but it's hard to have these classes on Zoom going all day, and you have to try to limit who can participate. But my goal would be to create all of the various water providing entities in Arapahoe County, which I counted 10, but there's probably more than that, to get together and come up with a plan. It's hard to do because they do compete against each other in purchasing water and acquiring water rights. So it's a little bit difficult, but what I would like to do is build the collaboration between all of these folks and the county and come forward to help our planning department develop a plan. We are considering having a 300-year water plan. Some people would say, well, that's too far out. There's no way you can go that far. Well, if we don't try, that's for sure. We can't do it. Of course, the closer you get, in other words, a 20, 25, 100-year water plan would have a lot more detail than the full 300-year water plan. But that's something that is key. I believe that the growth that many people see happening in Adams County on the northern side of I-70, but just on the east side of E-470 is eventually going to happen in Arapahoe County. I think it happened in Adams County first because of the airport and the big hotel, the Gaylord that was put in out there. I think the city of Aurora and Adams County did some great marketing and planning to get those things. I do believe that the Colorado Air and Spaceport that is north of Watkins there will also bring some growth, some economic growth, and require some residential growth in our area. It's coming to Arapahoe County eventually. And the best thing we as county officials can do is try to plan to do that responsibly so that people pay for that growth as it goes. The developers pay as you go, and that the least amount is charged to the citizens of Arapahoe County that are already in place.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and from our perspective, from a land development approval process, we do require will serve letters in terms of is there available water to serve the development that's being proposed. Like Commissioner Baker identified, we would like to update our current plan that we have. It is a 100-year, water source plan, but it needs to be updated. It's roughly 15, 20 years old. And this workshop that the commissioner and planning staff have been in the last week, the 2 workshops, and there's one more, is leading to what that looks like. And so more than likely, we're going to submit an application to the board as part of our budget for considerations of doing that plan. And as Commissioner Baker identified, we really want to have a partnership because, Arapahoe County doesn't provide water, but we're very dependent upon it. And so we want to work with those districts, the water providers, to see what that really looks like and how we can move and accommodate development into the future.
Absolutely. Before I give you the results of the second poll question, I want to ask one more. This is sort of along the lines of the fiscal limitations. We of course are anticipating the ARPA funds sometime soon. Does the county have any specific plans to pursue other government grants this year? And do we know any that we're for sure going to pursue?
I can
Well,
answer a couple of those.
Yeah, both of you
talk
can.
about the
Excuse-
earmarks, Brian.
Yes, we have pursued earmarks on a couple of projects. An earmark is when a congressman or a senator asks for a project that they can put into, in this case, the transportation plan. Or transportation reauthorization bill that's coming up in September. So Congressman Crow has requested projects from us, and what we have submitted is the Sky Ranch Air Park I-70 interchange as one project. We also submitted I-25 and Bellevue as another project. And both of those have been submitted to him. Now what happens is it goes through a committee, the Transportation Committee in Washington, goes through that meat grinder, and if it's approved by those committees, then it gets specifically written into the transportation reauthorization bill. So that's a couple of projects we've looked at. Just recently, Senator Hickenlooper asked for the same thing just last week, and we're in the process of going to submit the same two projects to him as well to show that there is synergy between both the representative side of things and the senator side of the House. So hopefully we'll be lucky enough to get some of the federal funding associated with those. We also pursue funding through Dr. Cog, which is another way federal dollars are distributed, and through the state. And we have applied for several grants through the state for safer Main Street projects and safety projects. So whenever we can use somebody else's money, we try to do that.
Commissioner Baker?
I do represent Arapahoe County on the Denver Regional Council of Governments. I am also the chair of the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum. I have a great working relationship with our municipalities and with Bryan, who does all of our transportation planning in unincorporated Arapahoe County. We won't pass up a grant opportunity. We won't pass up any opportunity to bring more of people's federal taxes back to Colorado, back to Arapahoe County, and especially to District 3. I'll be an advocate for folks where it makes sense. What I can't do is justify, based on all of those factors that Bryan talked about, that we go through when we become accredited, about how they plan things, how they look at where transportation funds should be channeled by the number of vehicles, whether a community has fewer than 800 vehicles a day and 114 homes, such as Box Elder Estates. And whether we spend $5 million for that loop road or whether we spend $370,000, maybe there's a compromise between the $5 million and the $370,000 that we can get to. It all depends on how much money we can bring. But right now we have to budget just like people do at home. You can't budget to have a brand new swimming pool in your backyard if you don't have, that money's coming in. We can't expend that funds. Our taxpayers hold our feet to the fire about spending their tax dollars wisely. So we have to look at all these different things, all this different criteria before we make those decisions.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And to the points that you've both made throughout the call, I would encourage people to keep an eye on our website, because there will be public comment opportunities, both for their transportation master plan, for the Box Elder situation and any number of other projects. We're always looking to get public feedback on that stuff. So along those lines, the other poll question was, how satisfied have you been with your interactions with our government here in Arapahoe County? 38% are very satisfied. 18% have been somewhat satisfied. 26% have been neutral or haven't interacted with us enough for it to register. 12% have been somewhat dissatisfied, and 6% have been very dissatisfied. So we're going to do our best to get that 18% under the line to move north. And thanks to Commissioner Baker and Director Weimer. And once again, you can watch a recording of this and of the other 4 conversations with commissioners on our YouTube page, or just visit our website. And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank